In addition to those notes, authorities say they are aware of an email that was sent to podcast hosts the day before the blast, New Year's Eve, where Littlesberger talks about the drone sightings out in the Northeast and claims the FBI had been following him. Investigators do confirm they are aware of this email. They can't say with 100% certainty that he wrote it, but at this point, they do believe he did. David.
Incredible information, Tim. Thank you.
No, they joke about it in the same way that a lot of people joke about it. They're like, no, there are no flying saucers from Mars.
Right.
Well, of course, they're not from Mars. They're not from another planet. They're from here. They've always been here. These are spiritual entities. This is my view, and I sincerely believe it. I mean, it's clear that these things reside, deep in the earth, under the water, and in the atmosphere. I do think all the puzzle pieces are sort of in plain sight.
Let me just ask you, we're so tight on time, Dr. Greer. The Las Vegas suicide bomber. So he wrote this manifesto that they're trying to suppress like they do with everything else. But it sort of ebbs into this world. Is there any connection just between what is going to happen next week and what we saw in Las Vegas on New Year's Day?
Correct. There is. And again, that was sort of a psychological warfare operation by someone in Special Forces giving a heads up on this. It's not a coincidence it happened at the Trump building and that it was in a Cybertruck. He refers to gravitic propulsion systems. And that's what's going to be coming out because we have mastered gravity control for decades. And this is why many of the craft people see that they think is alien.
And he wrote about that in the manifesto. Just a final question.
He did.
Following whatever happens next week,
gave investigators a clear picture of the 37-year-old's motive. In a series of notes on the phones, the U.S. Army Green Beret outlined political and personal grievances. Las Vegas police read some of the ramblings.
Left behind notes found on his cell phone, providing clues to a possible motive.
And in there, you can read a couple of the excerpts. We are the United States of America, the best country, people to ever exist. But right now, we are terminally ill and headed towards collapse.
So this email came in on December 31st at 10:42 a.m. That is Tuesday. He said, in case I do not make it to my decision point or onto the Mexico border, I am sending this now. Please do not release this until 1 January and keep my identity private until then. First off, I am not under duress or hostile influence or control. My first car was a 2006 black Ford Mustang V6 for verification. What we have been seeing with drones, he puts that in quotes, he says drones, is the operational use of gravitic propulsion systems powered aircraft by most recently China and the East Coast, but throughout history, the U.S. Only we in China have this capability. Our OPSEN, that's Operations Center, our OPSEN location for this activity is in the box below. China has been launching them from the Atlantic from submarines for years, but this activity recently has picked up. As of now, it is just a show of force, and they are using it similar to how they use the balloon for SIGINT and ISR, which are also part of the integrated comms system. There are dozens of those balloons in the air at any given time. The so what is because of the speed and stealth of these unmanned aircraft. They are the most dangerous threat to national security that has ever existed. They basically have an unlimited payload capacity and can park it over the White House if they wanted. It's checkmate. U.S. government needs to give the history of this, how we are employing it and weaponizing it, how China is employing them and what the way forward is. China is poised to attack anywhere in the East Coast. I've been followed for over a week now from likely Homeland or FBI, and they are looking to move on me and are unlikely going to let me cross into Mexico, but won't because they know I am armed and I have a massive VBID. Let me pause right there for a second. So he says a massive VBID. When I was talking to the FBI yesterday, they didn't know what a VBID was. I had to explain what that acronym meant, literally.
You fucking serious?
Dead serious. I said it twice and he goes, you said that word VBID. Can you tell me what that is? For your audience, a VBID, for your audience who has not been in the GWOT for the last 20 years, a VBID is a vehicle-borne improvised explosive device. In layman's terms, a car bomb, what we saw at Trump Tower. So, backing up, he says, I am armed and have a massive VBID. I've been trying to maintain a very visible profile and have kept my phone, and they are definitely digitally tracking me. Here's where he gets into the other stuff, and this is where we had to redact the names. Well, your producer redacted the names. I have knowledge of this program and also crimes that were covered up during airstrikes in Nimruz province, Afghanistan in 2019 by the admin, DOD, DEA, and CIA. I conducted targeting for these strikes of over 125 buildings. 65 were struck because of CivCas, that's civilian casualties, that killed hundreds of civilians in a single day. U.S. FORA continued strikes after spotting civilians on initial ISR. It was supposed to take 6 minutes and scramble all aircraft in CENTCOM. The UN basically called these war crimes, but the administration made them disappear. I was part of that cover-up with U.S. FORA, an agent, redacted, of the DEA. So I don't know if my abduction attempt is related to either. I worked with, redacted, IO staff on this as well as the response to Bala Murghab. Redacted commander at the time, redacted can validate this. You need to elevate this to the media so we avoid a world war because this is a mutually assured destruction situation. Then he says, for vetting, my LinkedIn is Matt Berg or Matthew Livelsberger, an active duty 18 Zulu out of 110, that's 1st Battalion 10th Special Forces Group. My profile is public. I have an active TSSCI with UAP, USAP access.
What is USAP? Do you know what that is?
I don't know what that is. But I checked his credentials on LinkedIn. So that was the first thing I did. I went to his LinkedIn page. First thing I noticed was all of his bona fides were in place. He has all the UAS training from USASOC and everything else. And so I said, okay, at least the guy knows what he's talking about with drones. That was a very rough dig into the guy. But my issue was I couldn't validate or verify any of this information. And I told him that.
You know, it's interesting. Joe, when I was on Joe Rogan's podcast last time, I mean, here, you know, Joe was like, I think that they're extraterrestrials. You know, he's openly saying that.
Yeah, it's not.
So you kind of
not the case.
Well, okay, or NHI, I guess NHI.
Yeah.
But I mean, here you and Joe are like the two big, most influential podcasters in the country, and you both think that it's not just a government secret tech, or that it's not just plasmas.
No.
And Joe's very close with Elon. Loves Elon, you know, like me, and I think probably like you, believes that Elon deserves a huge amount of credit for saving free speech in this country. Elon says there's nothing there. He never sees anything, and they've got an amazing rocket system that sees a lot of things.
I'm not sure. I've talked to Elon about this a number of times.
Okay.
And I'm not sure he says that.
Okay, I thought he did say that.
No.
I thought he said if there's any aliens.
He jokes about it, which is a tell. Trump does too. And they joke in the same way. I mean, of course I love them both, obviously. And I feel like, you know, I feel like they both have really been great for this country, you know, net, as they say. But, no, they joke about it in the same way that a lot of people joke about it. They're like, no, there are no flying saucers from Mars.
Right.
Well, of course, they're not from Mars. They're not from another planet. They're from here. They've always been here. These are spiritual entities. This is my view, and I sincerely believe it. Can't prove it. But since you asked, so he is, I've never heard Elon say that's not true.
Be dismissive.
That there's nothing there. He just said, look, we monitor space. That's what they do, right? And this is self-evident. If there have been so many sightings in this country and around the world that if they were from another galaxy far, far away, there would be some satellite evidence of that. They'd be picked up coming into our atmosphere. And of course, that's not, as far as I know, true.
Well, we do have some photos. I mean, there's that one photo of the one, I can't remember. It's in the James Fox documentary. So there are some of those, apparently.
Coming through space in here.
And certainly I've been told there's a lot more of those photos and images. But yeah, I mean, there's also... It would not surprise
me, though. I mean, it's clear that these things reside, you know, deep in the earth, under the water, and in the atmosphere. I do think all the puzzle pieces are sort of in plain sight.
Did you ask Putin about it?
I did not ask Putin about it. I would never have done it on air because I did ask him a bunch of questions off camera about, you know, he has access to, of course, he controls the Soviet archives, and the Soviets are great archivists. And we know that from the, you know, I'm interested in Soviet leadership and government and all that stuff. There have been a couple amazing books written. The Court of the Red Tsar being, I think, the greatest of them, about Stalin, for example. And one thing you learn from reading the book is they kept records on everything, almost like the Nazis, like crazy level records. And, you know, most of them have never been disclosed. So I did have some questions for Putin about that, about Rudolf Hess specifically. It's one of the great stories in history that doesn't make any sense at all. The number 2 guy in Nazi Germany flying into Scotland in a plane by himself and bailing out, you know, right before the U.S. entry into the war, and had all these things to say that were wild. And one of the things he apparently said in his debriefs was he believed that Hitler was being influenced by demonic spirits that he had summoned through the occult. Huh? That's not worth knowing more about.
There's a lot of stuff on that.
There's a lot. There's a lot, but Hess said that. So I immediately asked Putin about that off camera. I didn't want to seem like a wacko having unauthorized questions, but I did ask him about that. He did not get a satisfactory answer, but I did not ask him about UFOs